What's up, everyone? You're listening to Sisters Breaking Cycles, the podcast.
Grab your favorite drink of choice and join us as we have some hard conversations that no one wants to have.
My name is Joanna, aka JoJo, and I am your host.
And I am your co host, Jasmine.
And welcome to episode 15. And
Mm-hmm.
today we're going to be doing a continuation of the education system. We are going to go over our part two. The last episode, we talked more about our perspectives, our point of views, me working within the system, my sister considering whether or not she wants to put her child into the public system. So
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it. It's the one right before this. Today, we're going to focus a little bit more on our personal experiences
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yeah.
education system as we grew up. But before we get into that, let's jump into our highlight or gratitude for this week. And take it away, sister. You go first.
Yes, thank you. So, mine this week is a highlight. It is my birthday month, and gonna be 30, entering the 30 club here in a little while, which is something I've been excited and been looking forward to this whole year. And the celebrations have already started. Me and my bestie kicked it off in Vegas this weekend. Went there and just had some fun. So I'm just excited for it, and I'm excited, for all the celebration and this new decade that I'm entering.
I'm so excited for you. You don't even know how excited I am for you. Even though, even though I'm like at the ending of my 30s and you're
Mhm.
entering your 30s, the fact that we're both in the 30 zone, I'm just like, yay. It's
Yes.
so much fun. Like I tell you, I'm actually excited to get into the 40s.
Mhm.
3 years from now. Less in February, so less than that. But I'm kind of excited to get into that era too. I feel like every decade brings something new. So instead of me dwelling
Mhm.
like I'm getting older, I'm like, what's the new decade gonna bring? Like I get
Mhm.
really excited. Um, so nothing to be like sad about, and you're not. You're actually excited about entering your 30s. A
Yes.
lot of people that I knew that were like leaving their 20s, entering their 30s are very fearful, like, oh my God, oh my God. Like, no, it's not a bad thing, it's a
Mhm.
great thing. Like
Yeah.
I said, it's gonna be great. Um, but yeah, I'm so excited that you're turning 30. I know you're not too excited because it's happening on Friday the
Friday
13th.
the 13th. Yeah.
But I'm glad you started it off in Vegas this past weekend with your bestie. That looked like a lot of fun, and you guys got to spend time. And I'm hoping you come to California next weekend so that we can celebrate, because I miss you and I want to celebrate you. Uh, but I know the cost of gas right now is like ridiculous. Like
It
it's
is.
and flights are just as expensive.
Yes.
But if you find it in your soul to want to celebrate in California, you just gotta let me know, and
Mhm.
I can make some magic happen over here. You just gotta let me know. And I suggest you drive out on Thursday night, not Friday
Now
nights.
Friday.
Some type of way about the 13th.
Friday is just, holding it out, a little cupcake with a candle, inside my house where nothing can go wrong or happen, because I am superstitious. We got Friday the 13th. Then the day after, we have what was it? Solar eclipse, which is a whole nother thing. And then on top of that, my numerology report is like, you know what, you just gotta chill for October because you're gonna have a rough ride, all right? It's just gonna be rough for you. So just take your time to prepare and hold on tight for the ride. So I was like, okay, yeah,
Ah,
no, we'll celebrate other days except for that weekend that it actually is my birthday.
I am curious about that whole numerology thing that you're doing. I am curious because I'm like, I wonder what my month has to say about me.
Yeah.
So you're definitely gonna have to like teach me that and see like how it is that you're coming up with these numbers and these like things of like potentially happening or not happening. I think it's
Yeah,
kind of neat.
it
But
is.
I'll still extend the offer out there. Come to California and we will
Okay,
celebrate
yeah.
and we will
Yeah.
celebrate we were supposed to go skydiving for your 30th. You said
Yeah.
you were like, for my 30, I asked you, I started asking you in the beginning of the year. I was like, you're gonna be 30 this year. What do you want to
Mhm.
do? And I know you're like me. You're not very into like throwing parties and celebrations. So
Mm.
what I thought about, I'm like, she's probably gonna want to do a trip. And I'm like, and I'm all
Mhm.
about doing a trip. So
Yeah, I
telling
know.
you, I kept asking you early on because I'm like, if she wants to do a trip, we got to start saving so we can book our flights and all that fun stuff.
Mhm.
But then you threw a curveball at me and said, I want to go skydiving. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to skydive. I've always wanted to skydive. But as I'm getting older, I'm more like, oh my God. And I don't even have children. I know people that have
Mhm.
children, they're like, hell no. The idea of jumping off of a flight and like something going wrong on
Right, yeah.
no, like a lot of people are like, hell no. They're like, you either do it prior to having kids or you're not gonna do it because you won't have that daring effect of God forbid if something happened to me. If I'm the one
Mhm.
unfortunate soul that something goes wrong with?
Yeah.
So
Well, that's exactly why we're not doing it on Friday the 13th. Our chances exponentially increase. But yeah, I remember I did want to do that. And
yeah,
now in my research, I want to do it in California because here I'm like, I don't want to jump over just desert. It doesn't seem that appealing, you know?
cousins that did it in Hawaii, and that looked dope.
That I feel like that would be a beautiful scene.
That looks so dope. Like the video, the view, I was like, whoa. I'm like that. I mean, if there's a place to skydive, Hawaii sounds very appealing to do it in. But but yeah, I'm just excited for you. I'm excited for you entering this new chapter. So definitely, just if you find it in your heart to want to come over here, you let me know.
Okay, sister. I will let you know. Thank you.
Okay, so let's jump right in to
Your
my
highlight or
and
your gratitude?
my highlight is I guess it's a highlight and a gratitude. It's a combination of both. So I've been living in the valley now. I want to say this is going to be my 6th year, I believe, or 5th year. One of those two. I don't know. I don't remember exactly, but we didn't have central air, and it
Mhm,
is horrible weather out here. I
mhm.
you have to be raised in this weather in order for you to like, be able to tolerate it. I
Mhm,
grew up, well, we grew up in Compton, California, which is like not that far from the beach, from Long Beach.
mm,
So
mhm.
climate was very different. It's crazy how a couple miles in between can make such a drastic change in
Yeah.
weather conditions.
Mhm.
Here, the heat feels like it's suffocating you. And when it's cold, you feel it in your bones cold. I'm just
Mm.
like, they're drastic. So, and I mean, we had little space heaters and we had like window AC and stuff, but this weekend we got central air and you don't know how happy I am for that. Like, yes, we're gonna have like a normal temperature home where it's enjoyable as it is. I'm already
Mhm,
I don't really like to go out or do much. So the fact that now I could set the mood to like my level of warmth or
mhm.
I'm just over the moon. I'm excited. I'm so happy. So that is like my
Yeah.
highlight, and it's also my gratitude. Like I am so grateful that my partner was able to install that in this house because it was a little too much for me.
Yeah, I love that for you guys because it sucks, living without it and not having that and just no heat, no AC in those weather conditions out there. It gets rough. So
Yeah.
I am happy for you guys. You guys finally have that to enjoy.
Yes. Thank you, sister. I'm thrilled. I'm happy. All right. So with no more hesitation, let's jump into our topic for today. So,
Mhm.
talking about the education system, we're continuing that conversation because there's just so much to talk about, I feel, from
There
so many
is.
perspectives and different angles and different experiences. So, in today, we kind of want to talk about our own personal experiences, like our journeys in school, and were they easy and flowy, or were they chaotic and winded, right? Like we're gonna
Mhm.
so go ahead, you start, sister. It's
Yes,
not our
okay. It's a
experience.
wild ride, I think, for both of us, but it's still very different. I think it was still very different for both of us. But, last episode we talked about, our thoughts and opinions on the system through, your career and then me, like as a parent and whatnot. And sometimes I think back to my own education and going through educational public school system. I'm like, oh my God, like how did I even end up here sometimes? Like how, where did these thoughts come from for me to want to end up here, based off of looking back, I had two very extreme um educations. Educations, I wouldn't say educations, but just experiences of public schools. And so growing up in Compton, that was a very different experience. We had like I remember elementary school, it was nice. It was I still remember it being a little bit relaxed, still very enjoyable. um, but when I think about, all the gates we had around our schools and even up into the high schools, like thinking back and going back and realizing like we had to walk through like a metal detector to, get into school. And we just did it. No one really bats an eye about it. We don't really think about it. You just kind of go with the flow, right? You just do it. Everyone else around you is doing it. So that's what you do, right? And going from that to another extreme, when I moved here to Utah, it was a very small town that we moved to, super tiny. And the schools were very different. I mean, there was no gates in the school. Like the kids were given trust with how to manage their time and how to, be on time for class and do this or that. And I feel like in both experiences, there were teachers that I felt like were there really trying to make a difference, really trying to be supportive, really being there like I'm here to teach you, to help build this next generation. But unfortunately, it was very few and far between. Um on both ends of the spectrum. And just thinking back on that experience and remembering what I wanted to do and be like me, I've always had a path, right? I've always had a path A, like I always wanted to be a doctor. Since I can remember, I had been saying that. And that was something that I followed all the way up until college. And then in college, I ended up switching routes and I didn't know what to do because I was so dead set on this one path. And obviously everyone encouraged me, right, to go on that path, especially our parents, but parents, family members, teachers, everyone around were very encouraging, like, oh yeah, stick to that path, go hard, that's what you love, go ahead and continue. And then when I got to college and like halfway through, I was just like, I don't know, this isn't for me anymore, like, and I was kinda lost. I didn't know what to do then. It was a big, like, realization, like, well, if I don't actually wanna do this, and this is what I've been told all my life, this is what I've been encouraged to do all my life, like, now what? I felt like I didn't really have anything to fall back on.
Did you also get a sense of like, I don't want to disappoint the people that are like
Mhm.
counting on me or that are like rooting for me because I've kept it for so long and it's like
Yeah.
halfway through this program and I'm realizing like this isn't what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how it felt because you think about something that has been such a big influence and a big impact in your life for literally the last, what, 12, 15 years of your life. That's a long time. especially when you're developing and you're growing and you're just so easily influenced by the people around you, right? By the people you want to make happy, by the people that you think are like, oh, they're telling me the right thing. Like, this is what I need to follow. They're not going to stray me. Of course, they always have good intentions, right? Our parents had good intentions and whatnot, but it did get to one point, like, say, after I decided to switch and was kind of a loss, not really understanding what I wanted to do. It made me dive into myself. And I did end up realizing that maybe, my parents were kind of living through me with, especially mom, because she was always into that. She always wanted to be a nurse. She always wanted um to continue that, but she gave it up to be, you know, have a family. And that ultimately that was her decision. But looking back on it, I do see how or why maybe her influence was so much stronger with me following that path.
Yeah, makes a lot of
And
sense.
yeah, so I started realizing these things. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is so crazy to think about going through these two different public school systems. And, you know, none of it really gave me what I needed for me to be able to like live my life fulfilled,
Mhm.
right? That is all stuff that I have had to learn on my own and turn around and reflect and understand in myself. I've had to like figure that out, right? It wasn't going through school that helped me get this apartment where I'm at now. It wasn't going through school that helped me, you know, land jobs and do good interviews and know how to write a good resume and, all these things to live life,
Mhm.
right?
You're
So,
straight on it. Like, I always
mhm,
tell you the same thing. I'm like, in school, I feel like in certain schools now they're starting to shift that and make things a little bit better, but it's a hit and miss and it's not where it needs to be. They don't teach actual living skills. They don't teach you enough of real life responsibilities other than just
yes.
basic core concepts
Mhm.
are not going to matter other than to increase your test scores to get you into a better university of choice if that's what you want to do,
Mhm.
and then pursue a degree of high status, right?
Mhm.
But the shoe doesn't fit everyone. And I think that's the biggest problem with the education system, that for so long, they're just like, this is the one path and this is what they're going to do. And the goal for every school is to get the highest rate of graduates that are going to go to a university, that are going to go to a community college. And then as a result, when these students are not properly guided or they don't know how to properly have the skills necessary to survive out there and advocate for
Mhm.
themselves,
Mhm.
end up realizing that's not what they wanted to do, or they end up just dropping out altogether.
Right, yes.
The high
Mhm.
school gets great ratings because in their book, they got these kids into these schools, they got these
Mhm.
whatever. But ultimately, there isn't a follow-up with those kids. Did they actually succeed with that plan, right? Or
Mhm.
just, yay, you made it there, yay, you applied, yay, you got accepted, and that's it. Like you never actually completed it. I
Mhm.
that should come back to the high schools and, like, deem them, like,
Yeah.
"Psych, you didn't, thought you did," uh, because there's this prestige on different schools and even universities based on their rates or whatnot, that sometimes are not fully the way they should be, rated. For me, my experience was different because I never moved to Utah. I was here in the Compton Unified School District my whole entire life. Elementary
Mhm.
feels like a blur to me. I don't remember anything about elementary. I don't remember my teachers. I don't remember friends. I don't remember much of my elementary. but that's also because I was enduring so much trauma during that time when
Mhm.
like, oh,
Yes.
I purposely chose to block those things out, the good and the bad. Like, I just blocked
Mhm.
years, chunks of years out of my memory.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember too much about it. Middle school, I do remember a lot more, but the things I do remember are not necessarily at home. They're more with friends. Like I remember the friend groups that I was a part of. I remember my little boyfriend crushes that I had. Like I
Mhm.
remember my friend circle that I would hang out with, and little things that we would do here and there that weren't necessarily academic. They were more like us being traviesos and traviesas. Uh,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, I have these memories that I'm like, "Oh, I remember that." Little pieces here and there, but I remember. As far as what you mentioned, really getting help and support, I don't feel like I got any of that support and help from the education system until I got into high school. And even then, it wasn't until my beginning of junior year that someone noticed me and actually was like, "Yo, you need help. How let me help you," right?
Mhm.
I remember in the ninth and 10th grade, the only teacher that stands out to me was Mr. Gonzalez. And that's because he was my salsa teacher and I love to dance. So he was my Spanish teacher and he started a salsa club and he's like, "You should come to the salsa club. You should come to salsa." And he would always tell me, and I'm like, "Nah, nah." He's like, "You should come." And then I started going and like I fell in love with it. So
Mhm.
that's the only reason why that name is like imprinted in my mind because he made an imprint, the core memory of me enjoying something in high school, right? And having fun. Uh,
Mhm.
but I don't remember too much academically as far as like supports or teachers that were like, "Hey, I see the potential in you in this," or "I see you struggling here. Let's get you support to get you to get a better academic grade or whatnot." It wasn't until I left the house, I was 16 at the time when I left mom and dad's house. And when I left, it wasn't even my counselor that paid attention to me. I think I met my counselor once, and I remember her name only because I don't like her. Her name is Miss,
Mm.
and I just didn't like her. There's so many Miss Smiths. Who knows which one of the millions Miss Smiths there is in the world? But
Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of her because every time that I would seek her for like help or guidance, it almost felt like she never had the time. And she would prioritize meeting with the athletes and like the popular kids and like making sure they were doing okay because they needed to be a part of that team and those academics had to be good. So I just felt
Mhm.
like she wasn't very helpful with me personally. I don't know about other students. And then my brother's counselor, when he didn't know who I was, but he worked closely with our brother. And when he started noticing that my brother was declining emotionally, like he wasn't himself, he was acting kind of off, he was doing things that weren't in his norm, he started like talking and checking in with our brother. And then our brother was the one that disclosed to him, like, "Hey, my sister left the house. She doesn't live there anymore." And then that's when his counselor was like, "What? What do you mean? Like, doesn't she come here to the school with you?" And my brother was like, "Yeah, but she doesn't live with us no more." And I didn't realize, and I don't want to get emotional. I didn't realize
I
how
know, I'm
much
gonna cry.
I know. I didn't realize how much it impacted our brother, but it did because someone noticed it. And I was like, "Whoa." I'm like, "Okay." So then when I was working 2 jobs. So then when I started going like in between when I had the jobs, I would go to school and I would tell the teachers like, "Give me all the work, give me all the work. I need to catch up. I need to catch up." I was horrible at math, but give me writing assignments, give me projects. Like I was great. I could make them happen in a fraction of the time. So I was like, "Give me everything." And then teachers would be like, "Hey, you're not coming to school, like your attendance and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna do it. I have things going on," but I never told anyone like I don't live at home. Like I am a
Mhm.
teacher on the run.
Mhm.
I would never say that. I would never tell people like I have 2 jobs I'm balancing out right now as a junior. to try to
Mhm.
survive. Like I didn't tell them that. And and then it wasn't until the counselor came and caught me one time when I was on campus and was like, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." And I talked, and I didn't know who he was. And he's like, "I'm the counselor. I'm one of the counselors here, and Mr. Dawkins." I swear, I wish I could get in contact with that man right now. The last thing I
Mhm.
heard was he became an assistant principal at that same high school at one point, but I don't know what happened. I mean, by now he must be retired. I can't imagine him
Yeah.
being in the education system, but
Mhm.
that man does not know the impact and the influence that he had in my life. Like, he's the reason why I like flipped over like 360.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for him because that's the first person in the education system that actually threw a rope at me. Like, hey,
Mhm.
help, I'm gonna help you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why I wanted to become a counselor because I'm like, I want to be a Mr. Dawkins. Like, I want to throw that hope
Mhm.
to someone when they feel like they're drowning.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm getting emotional.
Me too. Because I remember, you're talking about these things, and I remember and just going back through all those feelings that we all went through, and just, but also imagining your side as well, going through it as a teenager, and you're like, you're not even fully developed yet
Yeah,
emotionally, your brain, nothing. So, to see some of the failures that happened for you, to hear about that, it's sad and painful. And it's sad and painful that this happens to a lot of students too, that go unnoticed, even to date, you know?
yeah. Especially in big public schools. I feel like
Mhm.
it it's almost impossible to focus on every child in a public school. There isn't enough funding for counseling and for people to really make an imprint in students and guide them and help them get to the next step in their journeys. As a teacher, you have 40, 50 kids in a classroom. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you could see behaviorals lashing out here and there. Like, yeah, you're trying to teach at the same time. It's very hard for them to make that full connection with every student that they're coming across with.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, Mr. Dawkins, he started paying attention to me. He's like, the one thing that like triggers me now, I'm just like, huh. But back then, I mean, I'm class of 2004. Make the math. Like that was a long time ago. That was my graduating class. So I just feel like at that time, yes, there was laws in place. Yes, there was things to protect children and to hold parents accountable for their children. But I never got like these truancy calls. I never got like, oh, threats or home visits to my parents, like, hey, your daughter's not coming to
Mhm.
school. Like I kind of flew under the radar when it came to that.
Yeah.
Now it's different. You miss 3 days and they're like blowing you up. They're leaving you voice
Mhm.
notes, sending you letters because now they're focusing so much more on attendance.
Mhm.
A huge part is because they're getting paid for it. And if your kid's not
Mhm.
showing up, they're not getting that public funding.
Mhm.
So, but regardless of what, they're being more aggressive when it comes to trying to handle truancy and attendance issues with students. Back then, they didn't care. It wasn't that big of a deal. It hadn't gotten to that point yet.
Mhm.
The other thing is, me as a counselor now, the moment that a student is a runaway and they're in my space, immediately I have to figure out if there's a police report that's been filed. If there's a reason why, like there's some sense of neglect or abuse in the household, I have to make a call to
Mhm.
CFS, like, Department of Child Services, like all these things. Like I feel like now you have to go through like all like it's really hard for a student to not necessarily get a spotlight on them. The problem is the follow through. And in a public system, if there's a school that has 2,500 kids, how are you gonna catch all of them? Yeah, you
Yes.
might have a list of all of them, but by the time you get
Mhm.
to that list, like, it's hard. There isn't enough staff compared to the ratio of students,
Yes.
and I
Mhm.
think that's one of the biggest problems in the public system.
Mhm.
But, I'm just like, I never they never pushed a police report. when I left my house. Like they never pushed uh, a DCFS report to check what was happening in the household. Like none of that was
Mhm.
ever pushed for back when I left the house. Um, but ultimately, this man walked. It almost felt like he handheld me the whole process. Like he was like, "Okay, this is how you're gonna apply to this. This is how you're gonna do that. I need you to start coming to school. I know you're working two jobs, but we have to find a plan. We have to make it work because
Mhm.
you want to graduate, right?" And I was like, yes, like that was my biggest thing. I wanted to graduate. I wasn't even thinking prior, like further than graduation. But my goal at the moment was like, yes, I know I'm not coming to school. Yes, I know I'm working two jobs, but I want to graduate. Like
Mhm.
that never diminished for any moment while I was like out trying to figure out life. Like I was staying with my friend. Like I was lucky they let me stay at their house. Then I was staying with another friend and her husband like at a different house. Like I had multiple things going on personally, but the ultimate goal in my mind was like, I am going to graduate. Because I
Mhm.
remember our mom, her words were like, you're leaving this house, you're gonna end up on the street, you're gonna end up pregnant, you're gonna end up doing drugs, you're not gonna do anything with your life, you're not gonna and I remember the words to her. I was like, I am going to prove you wrong.
Mhm.
I held that so strong in my gonna prove you wrong. Like everything that
Mhm.
you're telling me to be, I am gonna be the opposite of that
Mhm.
to you. And I think that's why I've been such a like straight person in my life, and that's why I'm scared of making mistakes. Not necessarily mistakes, but I'm scared of like loosening up and having fun and
Yeah.
God,
Mhm.
because I've always
Mhm.
been like very. This is what I have to do, and this is what I'm.
Yeah.
Um, But ultimately, I did. I graduated high school. I didn't get an opportunity to go straight to Dominguez Hills, which was the school that I was considering at the time because it was in Carson. We were in Compton
Mhm.
because one of my teachers didn't remove a D from my report card. And I made up all this extra work to pump it up to a C. And we had been working with the counselor that he's like, you had to get it to a C in order to be able to be admitted and apply and all that. You cannot have a D. And that was the only teacher that was giving me a D. And I remember going and like pleading. I'm like, what do you need me to do? Like, I know I missed. But she was just like, no, this is going to be one of those situations in life where you're going to learn. You're going to learn because you're not going to get off this easy. Like you should have been here and you weren't. So regardless of how much work you do now, your letter grade is a D. I'm not going to change it.
Oh,
And I
I
remember
hate teachers like that.
I remember in the moment, I hated her guts so much. I was like, I am gonna blow up your car. I was like so mad. I was so mad because like you are the one person that is in my way of being able to get a full ride to a university right now. Like you are the only person,
Mhm.
like, and I was like huffing and puffing. And now I'm like, yeah, she was a jerk. She could have easily, like, I did the work. Like, give me a chance at life.
Mhm.
Yes, she could have. At the same time, I'm like, life needed to teach me a lesson. Like I thought I was being
Mhm.
grown up. I thought I could live on my own while I'm still a mocosa. I thought that I could
Mhm.
handle all these things and get away with like skipping school half the time and still graduate and go to a university. Like, woo, I still did it, even though I didn't necessarily do what everyone else did. So
Mhm.
now I look at it like it was meant to go that way to teach me a deeper lesson. I couldn't get away with getting things easy, is the way that I see it now. But as
Mhm.
a result, I ended up going to Cerritos College, and I was at Cerritos College for 8 years. Community college is meant for you to be there for 2 years and then transfer to the university of your choice.
Mhm.
But because I didn't have guidance, I didn't know where to go to get help. The admissions office, the financial aid and all that was intimidating to me.
Yes, it is.
The thought of walking through those doors, I was like, "No, not gonna happen." Like, I'm scared. Like, it almost felt
Mhm.
like I was gonna get in trouble if I went to go ask help for help. So I didn't. I never met with a counselor. I never set up a plan for myself. And instead, I just get my financial aid, go on the little catalog, pick the classes that seem fun to me, and just I kept taking classes and I kept taking random classes, like elective classes, classes that didn't really matter. Like at the end of the day, there was no strict roadmap into like, okay, this is the ultimate thing I want to do. This is the classes and the courses on the roadmap to get me to the 2 years and then transfer out.
Mhm.
No,
Mhm.
and a lot of students have no idea when they go to
Yep.
college what they want to do.
Mhm.
And they're just like, okay, I'm just gonna go and take generals. Okay, there's only so many like English and math classes you could take. After that, history classes, science classes, math classes are tailored to the type of professions you want to go into. So, what exactly is it that you want to do, you know? And I had no clue. At this point, I still didn't even know I wanted to be a school counselor. I didn't know that.
Mhm.
No idea what I wanted to do. I was in community college and I ended up blowing through my financial aid, had no more financial aid, and I didn't even get an associate's. And it wasn't until I started working and I was working at a credit union because that's one thing about me. I was always a hustler. Like
You are. Yes.
I
Yes,
was
you are.
never employed. Like
Uh-huh.
ever. I w- at most of the time I was working two jobs. I was working like a little fashion store on the weekends, or like some days after
Mhm.
school I had Pollo Loco. Then after Pollo Loco, I worked at Home Depot. Like
Mhm.
wherever there was an opening, I would be applying and I would get the job. And I think that's one of the reasons why my personality is the way it is, because I started at such a young age and I was just kind of like, go, go, go. And I would talk
Mhm.
to different people from different walks of life. So I think that helped me develop
Mhm.
my personality and develop like when you want something, you go and you get it and you ask for it,
Mhm.
work for it,
Mhm.
which I'm happy about that. That's a good thing. But that's when there was a recruiter for University of Phoenix that would always go in. And at a credit union, more often than not, you know the people that you're talking to. Like you know your members by name. It's not like
Mhm.
at a regular bank where there's thousands of people. What are the odds that you're gonna know them? And there, it's like a member. It's like clubs only. You gotta be a member. And
Mhm.
it's the same people that always go in all the time. So this girl would always come in and she would always wait for me in line. And I would always be like, okay, like, there's other people that can help you. She'll be like, no, I'm gonna wait for her. I'm gonna wait for her. And
Wow.
I was like, okay, whatever. She was cool. It was good. I would always talk to her. And she's like, have you thought about going back to school? And I'm like, no, no, I'm done with school. Like, I'm done. I wasted so much time and I got nothing out of it. Like, I'm done.
Mhm.
And she was like, well, what would you want to be? Do you know? And I'm like, no, I don't know. And that's why I'm done. Like, I'm fine in banking. Like, I'll just make a living out of banking. I'm good here. And she was like, well, here's my card. And she would always give me her card all the time. When she would notice that I was in the drive up window, she would leave from inside the lobby and drive up in her car. And she would always be like, how's it going? How's your day? And I'm like, good. And at first I would get annoyed. I'm like, oh my God, like she's so annoying sometimes. Like, she just doesn't take no for an answer. But now I'm like, well, duh, that's her job. She's a recruiter. She's not gonna
Yeah.
get was good at her job because she ended up catching my attention. I remember one day I had a horrible day, and I think she was one of like the last people that I kind of helped, and I was just like mad. I was just annoyed. I was like, I'm not having a good day, and she was just like, it's time to make that change. And I was like, I'm gonna go see you.
Yeah.
I ended up making an appointment with her. I went in and I went to go see her, and I got my bachelor's from University of Phoenix. It cost me an
Mhm.
arm and a leg.
Yeah.
It cost me an arm and a leg because private schools are expensive.
They
I could
are.
have gone to
Mhm.
a public school, public university, Cal State, transferred out. It would have been a fraction of the price of what I paid for my degree. But I got
Mhm.
my degree. And what I like about private institutions is they tailor the classes around your work schedule, around your life. So it didn't
Mhm.
necessarily feel like I had to put my life and my job and everything on pause. I was doing both of them at the same time. So that's
Mhm.
that's why I really enjoyed it. got my degree, and I remember when I was working towards my degree, they were like, "Well, what do you wanna do? What's gonna be your degree?" And I was just like, I still didn't know what I wanted. They were like, "Well, we need to put you on a degree." Like, we need to. And I remember telling them, I'm like, what I would really wanna do is, work at a school. Like, I would like to help kids. Like, I wanna be there for kids that need help. And she was just like, "Well, okay, but what? Like a teacher, like a counselor, like an administrator, like what type of job at a school?" And at the time, I couldn't fully express, like, I wanna be a counselor. I was just like, "I don't know." So, I ended up just getting a very generalized degree, which could open doors to multiple faucets, not just necessarily education, but
Mhm.
education was one of the doors that would be opened with the degree. And then once I was done with that degree, um, I ended up landing a job in an actual years later, like 3, 4 years after I had my degree at a school because my current sister-in-law, she's like, she works at the school and she was just like, "Hey, there's an opening, you should apply. It'll get you your foot in the door." And I was like, "Yeah, I should." I'm like, "Why not? I need to give it a taste to see if that's actually what I
Mhm.
want to do or not."
Yeah.
So I did. I fell in love with it, and I was the office manager. Like, I wasn't like actually working with the students, but in reality, I was. And I kept working with a lot of the students that were having the truancy issues, that were lacking motivation, that were in trouble, that were being sent to the office, to the dean's office, to the principal's office. And as they're there, I'm like talking to them and I'm like, "Well, what's going on? Well, talk to me." And I'm like, "Oh my God, I am like doing counselor stuff. I want to be
Mhm.
a counselor. This is what I want to do." And I was like, "Well, I can't do it with a bachelor's. I have to get a higher degree." And that's what pushed me into going into getting my master's degree in counseling. And at that point, it was crystal clear. I'm like, counseling. Like,
Mhm.
someone asked me today, what is the degree focus going to be? I am able to openly say counseling, which for my
Mhm.
bachelor's, I was kind of unsure still. But once I got my feet wet, I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And I went for it again in a private institution. So it cost me an arm and a leg. And I'm mad
Mhm.
about it right now because I have to start paying it back.
Oh, I know, right?
Yes,
Gosh.
I'm not too happy about it. But ultimately, I am doing something now that I enjoy. And I'm serving the purpose that I feel like I was intended to serve. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's gonna be something long term. I don't know if I'm gonna end up retiring as a counselor because you know me, I change. I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do that. Like, I want to do so many different things that it's not to say like this is set in stone. This is it for me. But I
Mhm.
reached that goal of what I wanted, which was to become a
Mhm.
counselor, and I did it. But kind of like what you said, it wasn't necessarily because of the system. The system
Mm.
itself, it was two individuals that made a drastic impact in my life. Our brother's counselor, which I owe him my current like level of education. I would have never done it if it wasn't for him. Like, he
Mhm.
inspired me the most. And then that one recruiter that never gave up. She
Right.
just never gave up. She's like, "I'm gonna get you to come in." And I was just like, "Nah, nah." And she just happened to catch me on a bad day where I was just like, "Man, F this job. Like, I'm gonna go see."
Mhm. Mhm.
But the recruiter, she doesn't do anything in education. She didn't do anything academically for me. She just did some
Right.
throwing a piece of cheese at me for me to wanna go.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
counselor, he did make a difference. He did make an impact in my life. Uh, Although it wasn't my counselor directly, it almost felt like he just took me under the wing and was like, this girl needs help and I'm gonna help her regardless of what. So yeah, I'm grateful for him because he really like shaped me into realizing like, yo, you're either gonna get with the program or you're gonna fall off this wagon and you're not gonna be
Mhm.
able to jump back on. So he gave me that like kick in the butt that I needed at the right time.
Yeah, but do you see how that those 2 examples, I would kinda say, me and my superstitions was like you said, the universe really stepping in, right? It
Mhm.
wasn't the system, it wasn't anybody else. Like, you could have easily kept on slipping under if our brother would have never mentioned that one sentence to his counselor, right? Like, that's
Yeah,
literally.
100%.
And so
Just
to
self
know that, yeah, to know that and understand that, and then just see like, wow, it would have been so easy for you to like totally take a different direction because the system was just not working out. It didn't work out for us. It's not working out now. I feel like people have good intentions that are doing it, like you. Now you want to also give these kids a chance, like someone gave you and like saw you suffering and reached out to you, because that's what you need as a kid, as a teenager. Like, we're not, like you said, we're not in that adult phase to go and ask for the help and reach out for it. We needed someone to reach out to us and give us the hand and help us up during
yeah.
those formative years. But it's hard to get people to do that. And these systems with these huge public schools, you just fly right under the radar sometimes. And it's like, what are we really learning? You said that you couldn't remember, much about elementary school, but that's mostly because of the trauma you had during your life in that time. But
Mhm.
even after that, it's like you don't remember much like school, right? Or teachers or like what you learned, right? Like, what would we do? We were wasting our time there all day, every day. And then, for you on your end, you had this a whole double life. Like, you had to be an adult outside of school and, keep yourself, be responsible for yourself and everything that came with like trying to be an adult. And it's like you didn't have any life skills at that time, nor was like the school able to provide you with any, like, say, of those life skills that could have also made maybe helped you outside during those tough times too, like outside of class and outside of the whole system of like trying to get you, to the next step and the next level. So, when we talk about things like this, and when I remember like my education, I don't remember much from it. I mean, I remember one teacher because he made class very fun and would he did show us life skills like that. I think that is why I remember this one teacher so much, because it's like, okay, this makes sense, this is translating out into the real world. You're teaching us something and I get to use this for the rest of my life, literally,
Yeah.
and is so. But that's it, like all that other stuff, math, science, this and that, it's like we're not even using it like in our real life, you know? When do you use all that? Now, getting into higher education, when you did, your when we went to college, and then you went ahead and did your masters and those things, those are a little bit more specific. I feel like they're a little bit different, but we're also at different like development and stages in our
Yes,
life at that point.
exactly. Like I mentioned, in my bachelor's degree process, I still couldn't really tell you for certain that I wanted to be a counselor. It
Mhm.
wasn't until I was entering my master's that I was like, clear vision, this is what it is, this is what I want. And I think
Mhm.
that's the biggest issue with the youth nowadays. For any listeners out there that have students right now, I encourage you as early as 8th grade, start talking about these things, start having conversations, because if you are relying on the public school system to do that for you, there's a lot of students that are going to fall through the cracks, and you
Mhm.
don't want your child to be one of the ones that falls through the crack.
Mhm.
So take take initiative and start picking at your child's like skill set. Like when I'm meeting with students now, I don't want to wait till their junior or senior years to start talking about what do you want to do. Just
Mhm.
fresh, ninth grade, because that's when they're freshly from middle school, and you start giving them like different surveys that are going to start talking about their interests. You start, and granted, they could be a fireman the first semester of ninth grade, And the second semester, they could be like, nah, I want to be a mechanic. And then the next,
Mhm.
which is great. That's all great. As long as they have some type of plan or vision of what they want to do. And
Mhm.
ultimately, that's a good thing if they're shifting because there's a reason why. They realize something is required in this that they're like, nah, I don't want to do
Mhm.
that. And
Yes.
they start realizing earlier on than in your case, you were about halfway through something thinking you wanted to do that, and then you realize,
Yes.
nah, that's not what I want to do.
Mhm.
So it's really important for students at an earlier time to start being exposed to the different things that different possibilities of what they want to do. Another thing that I think it's really important for parents to not do is what our mom was kind of doing with you, like projecting her desires onto you, like,
Mhm.
and unknowingly, unconsciously putting that pressure and push on you to
Mhm.
go against, like, you were already like, hold on, I don't think I want to go that way, but it was more of that like unconscious, like, no, but this is great, but this is good.
Mhm.
It was good for her. It would have been a good major and career for her,
Mhm.
but ultimately that wasn't the route that you wanted to take anymore, you know?
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of parents sometimes are like, just become a teacher or become a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, something safe. And you shouldn't have to do something safe. Do something that you genuinely enjoy because I tell everyone, I was like, if you're gonna go into education, heads up, the money is not good. So if you're a millionaire, it's not good. You there's a lot of benefits and perks to it, but it's not, if you're doing it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
But ultimately, there's so many things that students could do. There's so many certifications out there that could earn you a higher yearly salary than a degree.
Yes.
So many certifications.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
just feel like they're frowned upon. It's like, "Oh, you're an electrician?" Like, "Oh, you're a plumber?" Like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
150 a year. How much do you make?"
Right?
You know?
Exactly.
And I don't have debt. I don't have no
Mhm.
educational debt. And here you
Mhm.
are working your little knuckles off, and it's like you're within the range of 60 to 80, 90K a year
Right.
with like
Right.
a bunch of student debt tied to you.
Mhm.
You weren't smart enough
Mhm.
to pay it as you went because no one teaches us that. Everyone
They
just teaches
don't.
us just get the money, get the money, get the money.
Mhm.
After that,
Mhm.
you'll pay it off. But it's like
Yeah.
if they would have started teaching us that etiquette, like, yes, you could borrow money as you're in school, but these little side jobs you have, make sure you put a little bit towards that interest. Make sure you put a little bit towards those payments. But we're not taught that.
No, we're not.
We're not taught financial literacy
Mm-mm.
about how to handle things and how to make. We're talked about, oh, how credit is good and get a credit card. Are we
Mhm.
taught how to manage a credit card? No.
Mm-mm.
What
Mm-mm.
ends up happening? A lot of students end up ruining their credit because they're early on, they just know they need credit, they get it, they end up spending more than they could afford, and then they default. And they're like, I'm young, whatever. But no, it starts harming your credit. So there's
Yeah.
so many things that need to be taught at an earlier age. Back then,
Mhm.
I wish I knew how to balance a checkbook. Now those don't even exist anymore.
Right.
Use checks anymore. But back then it was necessary for me, you know?
Yeah.
But it is a responsibility of the parent now to start teaching these life skills because whether or not your school system where your child is going has classes here and there, I guarantee you they're not going in depth. They're just
Mhm. Nope.
touching the surface, introducing the subject, but they're not really teaching them. So it is
Mm-mm.
important that as parents, you take that role and you really start teaching them the life skills that they're going to need in order to be successful. And don't shame them if they're like, a lot of students right now are like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. And people are like, okay, what's your plan B or C? It's not to I always tell students, it's not to discourage you from your goal because there's a lot of people making money on YouTube right now. Like
Yes.
ridiculous money, like
Mhm.
dollars money. And
Mhm.
they're still in school, some of them. They're not even like fully graduated, doing videos and skits and all that kind of entertainment, right? And I always say it's not to bash you. Like I love that for you. Like if you're trying to make money, by all means, you keep doing what you have to do. You strategize to make sure you get the views, to get the numbers, whatever you need to make that money. But
Mhm.
ultimately, let's just say YouTube crashes or has bankrupt. Like maybe it's not you and your skill set, but something happens to the company. What is something else that you could still do if you chose to do a different avenue, right? And it
Mhm.
doesn't have to be a degree. It doesn't have to be college, but is there like a certification? Is there a skill set? Do you want to do beauty? Do you want to do nails? Esthetician? Like there's so many different things that can still generate a lot of money without necessarily getting in debt and getting into a full college degree.
Mhm.
Be more open-minded of that and not shame their kids if they're not choosing to do a community college or a four-year university.
Mhm. Yes, I
Don't put that
agree.
pressure on them.
Mhm.
But teach them that in life requires money. So whatever skill set you choose to do, make sure you're able to provide a living situation for yourself.
Yes. Mhm.
That's all that matters ultimately.
It is because that's where you spend most of your time in your life. We are in the educational school system for the first what is that like from the time you're 5 typically until like say if you get a college degree until you're like 23, right? 23, 24. Typically
If,
saying
if,
like
and
if
that's
you're in a straight line like
exactly. Otherwise, it's not that easy.
yeah, like if it's like that, that's a long time. It feels like a long time, especially because you're going through it while you're growing and developing mentally and emotionally and all that. But
Mhm,
then think about all the time that you spend outside of school after you've done all that. It's the
mhm.
whole rest of your life. And that's
Well,
what matters because that's where you're going to be living every day for the hopefully the next 80 years, you
yeah,
know? And
yeah,
that's a long time.
it is. So make sure you're doing something that's going to generate some type of financial capacity to maintain that lifestyle that you're looking forward to. You know,
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong
Yes.
with having a little side hustle. YouTube could be your side hustle, but come up with something that's going to be a supplemental hustle, or if that's going to be your main, what's a supplemental? Uh, because the days of like you just retiring and just getting things for free, those things don't exist. Those days are gone.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
have to
we
set up something
live
for yourself.
mhm. Yeah, we live in a totally different time period now. I think about my son and his education, and I'm like, is he gonna be like, you know, all into technology and stuff? Because he's gonna have to learn how to do all that and use
Don't
all that. And it's already happening. Like
do that. Don't.
technology is skyrocketing through the roof with the things that they're coming up with the things that they're building with it. Like, I mean, it is mind blowing to think about how far it's come. And then to think about my son is like he's about to start his journey, and it's like he's gonna be living in a whole different time period by the time he's out of school. And that's what I'm concerned. I didn't make sure that once he's done, if he's going through the school system, if he's going through college or whatever it is, that by the time it is over, he has the life skills, maybe transferable skills that could go across many different types of jobs and careers and environments. So for the next 80 years of his life, like you said, he knows how to take care of himself
Mhm.
in this world.
Don't even get me started with technology, sister. That's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it's a whole different rabbit hole.
Whoever the hell came up with this AI bullcrap needs to get into a hole and cover themselves because I'm
No
so
AI for
upset.
you.
I am so upset with that. Like
Mhm,
people are like, "Oh, it's so cool, it's so this, it's so that." No, like AI is writing full papers and full essays for these kids
mhm.
as it is. They can't do proper sentences, and I'm
Yes.
not talking about like the Beverly Hill kids and the kids that live up in the hillside. I'm not talking about those children because that type of education over there, it's not comparable to the minority
Mm-mm.
education system. They're
No.
two different monsters. They're two very different monsters. If you live what they call the red line communities, the communities of poverty, the communities where you have the low income students, the students that get things paid for, their lunch paid for, and all these things, they cannot formulate sentences anymore
Mhm.
because of cell phones. They're on cell phone. They write a paper. I remember at my previous school, I would like I was a dean at one point, and sometimes I would have them do reflection pieces to me and like write to
Mhm.
me, and I would be sitting there trying to read these papers, and I'm like, oh my god, like you would think you were reading sentences from like a third grade student, and
Wow.
these are high school kids. But they
Mhm.
can't articulate, and they'll be like, "Miss, can I type it?" "No, you cannot. I need you to write it." Because they're losing the skill to write. They don't know how to write
Mhm.
because technology does everything for them. They start typing, autocorrects,
Yep.
and
Yep. Mhm.
they don't even have to think anymore. It just
Mm-mm.
happens instantly for them, and I'm like, "No, they're like, forget about cursive. I don't even think this generation knows what cursive is anymore.
Right.
Literature in the future. I know these things because even just writing, it's not something that comes natural to them anymore. They're losing a lot
Mhm.
of skill sets.
Yeah.
So,
So you
but
see with go ahead.
I'm like, again, it starts at home. I don't have a
Mhm.
child yet, but you best believe when I get one, I'm be like, we're gonna start tracing A, B, C, like back to
Mhm.
like basics, you know, because it is important. It is these things that are gonna help them thrive just a little bit more than your average kid out there. They're
Mhm.
gonna be in this competitive world. Like just learning skill sets that don't let them just rot and disappear. It is our responsibility to keep teaching that if it's not being taught in the system. What do you
Yeah, yeah. And at this point, we should just assume that it's not, and take the responsibility. Because how are you to know? You can't go to every class, every one of your child's class, and like make sure they are learning what they're supposed to be learning, right? So it's up to us as parents to still always assume and take the initiative to know that your child is getting those life skills, those skills needed to succeed in this world. Doesn't matter what they decide to become or what they decide to do. These are things that are needed just to be able to successfully be in a world and, climb up the ladder per se, if
think?
that's what they want to do.
Yeah,
Like we always need to take that upon ourselves as parents and make that our responsibility always. Because, now with you mentioning the technology thing, it seems like maybe we'll be able to see the gap even further, or like just more in plain sight and understand like, okay, you really aren't learning anything by going to school. Like this is like proof right here that
yeah,
you're really coming here and not really like learning nothing. So that might shine a light on things, right, on where we are at in the system and the huge gaps that need to be filled. So I don't know, hopefully that will bring a lot of insight to people. But yeah, I do agree that parents, it's your responsibility first.
yeah. Starts at home.
Mhm.
Tag team the educators, but starts at home.
Yes.
All right. That was a lengthy episode.
Yeah, it's a good one.
A lot of information.
Yeah.
And let us know in the comments what are your thoughts after we shared our experiences and you know our point of view and how the system either helped us or didn't help us.
Mm.
So go ahead and leave comments below, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.